everyone. Welcome to Squirrel Brain Stories. Just a little reminder right here at the beginning. We're going to be talking about heavy topics. Please make sure to take care of yourself. Reach out to a friend if this triggers something in you. Make sure you drink your water, take your meds, and just maybe if you're not in a good place, today is not the day for this. Come back to us later.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Squirrel Brain Stories. We are going to be picking up Beth's story. If you weren't here for the previous episode, go back and listen so you can hear the beginning of Beth's story about her time in the Peach House cult. And we're going to be picking up, but to reintroduce everyone, this is Niko. You guys have probably seen him on the podcast if you guys watched. And Beth, that's whose story we are hearing right now. And then Theresa here at the end, who is also a survivor of the Peach House cult, and we'll be getting into her story as well. So we will kind of pick up where we left off in the previous episode. And you're kind of telling us about how, I believe, was it Debbie? You had left from your dad's house and went to your friend's parents' house, and then ended up kind of getting guilted into returning to the cult. And then there were some gaps in, like the timeline that we're really not sure of, because you ended up showing up where I was now living outside of the Peach House with my prearranged husband, and we don't know how that happened. So after you were guilted in back to the Peach House cult, what was next after? What happened after that?
So I think that I believe, again, because there were multiple houses purchased and because they kept moving rooms between the sisters' rooms and the brothers' rooms, it kind of interferes a little bit with my recollection. So I want to account for that.
Same.
So some of the things that I remember, just to kind of orient myself in this story, I remember the room across from the bathroom on the main floor of the Blue House.
Yes.
I remember that there was another teen mom with a little baby that was maybe 6 months old. And he would wake up and cry in the middle of the night. And I used to make babas for him. And she had a really difficult backstory.
With her sister there as well, right?
Her sister, her sister and her brother at various points and various places. But when I think about that room, and when I came back, where was I? What sisters were in the room? It's I have to kind of find a landmark for the memories that
to place them. Yeah.
And then I know eventually we did move downstairs to the basement of that house. Now, at the same time, I think that the band intensified, because we used to have band practice in this kind of music room. It must have been an old garage that had been converted at the Peach House, and it was kind of soundproofed. And I was one of the singers. We were all chorus singers, basically. And my betrothed was a musician. And I
helped build that.
Oh, you did? Wow.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. So it was a real garage in the beginning. The soundproof.
The soundproofing.
The soundproofing and the drywall.
And there was a little room in the back too, right?
I don't remember that.
That was where Micah would sleep.
I know.
But it was kind of detached, so it was an outside door.
Inside of it.
But wasn't there a room with a little door inside?
You know what's so weird? We did band practice in there 100 times. I don't remember what
was in that room?
It was Mickey's room.
Oh,
the door was outside of so it was the garage, and then it was music room, and on the outside of the garage was the door to that room. It was more like a little closet.
So the door wasn't on the inside of the band room?
It was on the outside.
I didn't know.
I don't remember that. Did it have a window?
It's what separated the outside from the actual music room. And they had a little light that they would turn on whenever they were practicing.
I remember that.
It was so dark in there.
Oh, yeah.
The red light on the outside of the garage. Yeah. Holy shit. Sorry. I totally forgot. It was on air light.
Yeah.
And it had the metal encasing around the light.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when it wasn't on, it was just no light, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't green or red. It was just the red color, right? Okay, yeah.
Okay, random detail that I just want to bring up just because I can. There was a big school bus parked in
Yes.
front of the beach house.
Yes.
Oh,
Now
we're
follow
just
me because
talking
you're not
about
here
this.
and you're, watching this.
Yeah.
In front of this house in the driveway, so there's a driveway and there's a garage to the right. The garage is the band room and there's the back door. There's a massive bus parked, and to the front of the bus is chained a 180-pound Newfoundland mixed dog named Bear.
Bear.
That was his breed? I
don't know,
never knew.
I'm okay. So later in life,
I
He
thought
doesn't
it
look
was
like a big black
Chow.
bear.
later in life, I had a Newfie Rottweiler mix.
Did you?
So I'm making an assumption here
Yeah.
that he was something in that he looked like a black Great Pyrenees. So he had very long,
But he
thick
was
fur.
a little bushier.
He was very bushy. I
Yeah.
don't know what he was.
He was weird.
Memo always told the story that he was Chow.
Really?
Part Chow.
I think he said because there was like one purple spot on his tongue, he was a chow. The thing is, he was a Mastiff style dog. He was huge.
Yes, he was
not-
huge. Unless also it comes into the same scenario is where we thought all of those houses were
You know, I
tremendously
saw
huge.
him.
Maybe it was a chihuahua. I don't know.
I saw him again when I was living in Sacramento. Some guy came into the store that I worked in at Walmart, and he had Bear, and I was like, Bear, and Bear looked at me and like came over to me and like was giving me love right there, and I was like, oh my God. And I completely forgot about this. I can't believe I am just remembering this.
Did you know this guy?
No, I had no idea
Whatever
who he
happened
was.
to
I
him?
was,
Like he
where
was chained
did
to the
you
bus
get?
and then he was gone.
That's where, well, no,
How did
when
this
we
guy and
left
Sam-
for Hawaii?
So I wasn't there when that. So you guys gave him to
I don't
someone?
know what happened to him. I
Oh my
wasn't privy
gosh.
to that information, and I had taken care of him.
Yeah, you were his
Okay.
caretaker.
Yeah, so, but that's crazy. And I was just like, where did you get this dog? He was like, Oregon. And I was like, oh my God. He was like, yeah, how do you know my dog? I was
Because
like,
he was my dog
I
first.
grew up with this dog. It was
Oh my-
incredible.
You know
Oh
what's
my gosh.
you know what's so I don't know. The fact that Bear was always so friendly and so eager to meet
Get
people
attention?
and get any attention at
Yeah.
all, being chained to a school bus. It reminds me.
And
It
later-
reminds me of us.
And then behind the
Later
garage in this
behind the
little
garage.
space.
But it reminds me of us. Like despite being chained, like we still retain some sense of like humanity and like.
I used
Yeah.
to try
I mean,
to take
he
him
was a
for
happy-
so many walks.
Oh, that
'cause
dog!
I know.
What a terrible life. He was so regal. He was so.
He
beautiful.
was.
And his chain wasn't that long. It wasn't like he could
No.
walk around the bus. It was like he could walk a couple feet.
It was, and then when
In
he
any
moved by the
direction.
garage, it was even
it was
shorter.
even shorter.
Shorter.
Yeah.
And it was all underneath plywood. So, like,
Ugh.
he couldn't even really get out.
For anyone to see him, really, he couldn't go very far.
Oh,
It was a real shame. And I tried to get him out as much as possible.
oh.
Because you would take him on walks, right?
I would
Mhm.
take him
Take
all
him
the way
out.
down to the hospital. That's
Aw.
why I spent a lot of time at the hospital walking him.
Oh.
Poor bear.
Yeah.
Sorry, anyways.
Anyways, yeah. So the bus and bear
No,
chained to the
So
bus.
the band and
Yes.
whatnot. So I remember we did band practice.
Mhm.
Now it moved from there to the blue house in the
Yes.
basement.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's kind of
where the donation room was
Yes.
and all the freezers.
yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of when like the kind of like dating intensified. Like so I'd come back, so they were like reestablishing my bond with the guy that I had already been earmarked
Uh-huh.
before. But it was kind of like, I'd gone and done
And so
my
now
thing,
you're
come
probably
back.
around 15.
Yeah. So band practice was like one of the main things where we like would spend time together. But then, so actually, Niko, your dad, he was the roadie, and I was the
Mhm.
apprentice roadie. So he would show me how to do the soundboard.
Oh, wow.
He would show me how to do like plug stuff in, like how to tune all the like. I mean, I don't know. There was a bazillion dials. Like,
Yes,
he'd be like, do this,
I
do
know.
this, do this.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no,
That's
it was
little.
really
That's
fun.
cool knowledge. Yeah.
But that was so like I immediately got kind of looped back into like we're rehabilitating you from your worldliness.
But then you had extra time in the band room. So like if so and so showed up early to start practicing, like you were there a little earlier, and then you helped like take down too.
Yeah.
So that gave him a little more time.
Extra few minutes here and there. But
Yeah.
I feel like they accommodated it.
Yeah.
So there was actually a point now at this point, I think it was after I came back, that it was like very more intentional, that like they used to take us on actual dates to like Denny's and stuff. So actually it was your parents
Wow.
would be tasked to take us on a date.
So you're
The same as
15. Same with
you
me.
Yeah, so we would go to Denny's.
And your mom.
Your parents would sit at one table, and me and him would sit at another table.
And so you were about 15, this
15.
age. So then that would have made him
Do the
20.
But
Okay.
Did I ever go on any of your guys' date? Because I know I went on and
You did? Did you go? Because your mom would take us sometimes too.
I didn't
Okay.
go on any of them because
You didn't earn them or something stupid,
Right.
probably. Yeah.
No, they were. So it kind of felt to me, like looking back now, like let's make her forget all of that and make sure she feels as connected and tied into all the people that she cares
I
about.
was gonna say conditioning.
Yes.
Mhm.
It was like we got her back, like we got the hook, we got to set the hook. We got to
Yeah,
get that.
give her something a
Mhm.
reason to stay this time.
Yeah, and then there were more conversations about getting married. It was a lot more explicit. Before then, it was more like we could all tell they were encouraging it strongly,
Uh-huh.
but we weren't sitting down talking about it. Like now, it was like a lot more explicit.
Wow.
But there was still like a bazillion other dudes that were always like, you know, kind of
Eyeballing and
eyeballing and
kind of flirting.
Flirting.
A little.
and the weird thing was like, so I have like this dual conditioning where there's the conditioning that's like, don't be rude. Don't be like, ew, get away from me,
Right.
nasty. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So they like smile and they talk to you and you're like, hee hee.
You have to talk back.
Like you're trying to be friendly.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
dang, now you've encouraged them.
Yes.
And there was this one particular, and it's kind of weird because part of me felt like I didn't know how to distinguish a friendship or a relationship from I didn't know the boundaries because I was 15 years old and I've already been through all this rigmarole. So I was talking to one of the brothers, and I mean, I feel like they were always mostly all flirtatious all the time.
Yeah,
But
they
we,
were.
We talked, and then I left the band room and went to go back to the basement, like where our room was. He followed me
Into our bedroom?
and it was very weird because there was like in my mind there was like an invisible barrier, like the brothers don't go into the sister's
Yeah,
room.
well, and they knew that.
And they knew that. So
Yeah.
I went and I like there. So I don't know how to explain this for like someone that's listening. It was like a hallway. It curves around, and then under the stairs there was like a bed, and then there was like a pony wall, and then there's a stack of mattresses, and then you're like in the room. He followed me like all the way past like almost past the pony wall, where like now you're in the bedroom.
Uh-huh.
And he like and I like turned around and I looked at him and he looked at me and I was thinking,
That's cool.
like, because we just had a conversation and he followed me. I'm like thinking, what are you doing in here? And he kind of looked at me and I looked at him and like, and I got the sense like he wanted to do something to me, or he wanted to like, it was very weird. It was like this intangible barrier was like being broken. And he kind of, as I recall, he kind of like gestured towards me and then like pulled back and like walked away. And I was like, what the fuck was that? What just happened? What just happened? What just happened?
That's so fucking creepy.
And in retrospect, now knowing more of the stuff that happened,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he was like, should I grab it or not?
I mean, she's here all by herself.
It was so surreal. Like I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do because I couldn't believe he was standing in our room. Never occurred to me that.
His intentions may have been different, or most likely were probably different.
And he was one of the senior brothers that was well respected,
Yeah.
that I didn't think was like a threat.
No, I never thought of him doing anything, inappropriate to any, like, I didn't know he was really capable of. He seemed too holy,
Mm-hmm. it was very,
if that makes sense.
yeah, it was very weird, but it really stuck with me because he definitely crossed a big boundary by entering the room,
Yeah.
but it was unspoken.
And like, yeah, and almost touching you or barely.
But then, of course, now here I am 20 years old getting this call from the police. And that was the first thought that came to my mind. When they're like, this has been happening. Did this happen to you? That was the first thing that came to my mind was if this was happening regularly with lots of the kids there, people were gaining access and they were touching the goodies. And then him walking back into that, like, was I almost? And was it happening then? And I didn't know. It just wasn't me. It was other people. And so that really shook me. It shook me hard. And it made me kind of question everything that had happened in the ministry because I still have this mindset where it's like good and evil, hell and heaven, you know, worldliness and godliness. And then realizing that the godliness is now like
the evil,
a complete facade for child abuse. Like, I think I like took that and put it in a box and locked it up for later because I don't think I could process it. I made so many decisions about my life, like based on those perceptions.
Yeah, and the lies. That would have hit me like a ton of bricks. Honestly, that's wild. And knowing that you were like within grasp, like that almost happened. That's just. It's mind blowing. And it would be hard to process.
And again, keep in mind, I'm, you know, maybe 15 years old at this point, and there's that sense of like, don't touch me, touch me. I like this, I don't like this. Why are you here? You shouldn't be here. But you followed me, you want me, I'm good enough. Like,
you like me, you think I'm pretty, maybe, like, or something.
Oh, did I entice you? Did my butt jiggle too much in that dress? Like, I don't know. There was like such, and it was a split second. And it was nothing, and it was everything, you know?
Yeah. That would be very confused. I mean, it sounds fucking confusing. How could you not be confused?
Because it didn't matter at that point. But then later,
you didn't know how to process it.
Through, I was like, I knew, like something in me knew that
it didn't
like that was the red flag. This whole like we respect kids, we respect boundaries, bedrooms, rules. It's like, do they follow rules? Yeah. When do they follow rules and who do they follow them with? And who are they going to tell?
Or who has to follow the rules and who doesn't?
Rules?
Yeah.
What are the freaking rules?
That's crazy.
If you're in charge, you can change the rules whenever you want.
Yeah.
Because you're God.
And you can make them apply to who you want them to apply and who you don't. Oh my gosh.
I think that's why life was so confusing because it did literally change on a dime like that. You know, what was the rule today might not be the rule tomorrow.
Yeah.
And same with expectations.
Yeah.
Because people were always shifting around, like, in their level of eliteness. You, like, someone fucked up and, like, oh, now you're in the doghouse. And now this person is, like, going to be, the protege because you fucked up or, whatever.
I remember there was a drummer, I think his name started with an E, who had a song. And at some point he pissed off Memo and he took the song away and gave it to a sister to sing as like a FU.
Really?
Like, you would be awarded like a song or like a solo part in the band based on how much you pleased Memo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The song was called Mi Hermano.
Don't you remember that one?
Yes, I do. We played it all the time. Yeah. You still remember it?
Yes.
I think I blocked it out. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Yeah. No, everything was.
I keep singing it.
No,
okay.
Everything was.
I think I blocked it out.
Everything was currency. Everything was currency.
I just did my little bongos over in the corner next to the big old speakers and just was like, I didn't want to be there. I hated it. Like the rhythm,
You'd be like, you would sometimes roll your eyes and be like,
I did not like it. I was not musically inclined.
When you got married, they tried to give it to me.
I was
but
so
I had
glad
no
to be out of
appetite
there.
for
I
it.
used to the bongos before you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hated it.
You were pretty
was
good,
not-
despite your disinterest. You were
Good at it.
You have
So-
more rhythm than.
Yeah, I certainly.
You got all into with sliding your.
I mean, I did.
Yeah.
You know, the different parts, and I mean,
As I watched you do like, I just did like this, like magic. Like,
but I hated it.
Solos
Yeah.
and-
Probably because like I was shy. I was so shy, and I hated being like. You know, I had to go places. Like, if the band went places and played, like, I'd sometimes, like, when we went to the rescue mission and played at their church, like, oh, I didn't want to play in front of people.
yeah.
I just wanted to hide in a corner, you know?
And I think that's how a lot of us felt about singing too.
Yeah.
I used to just mouth the words.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew.
They say if you just say watermelon, but without.
Oh my, and he
Kinda
say
looks like
watermelon over and over and over. Holy shit. That's
Looks
awesome.
like you're singing, so.
Oh, I'm going to do that next time I'm somewhere and I don't know the song.
Well, they eventually wrote me that song, Please Little Girl.
Really?
It was a solo. It was
Yeah.
a solo song. So I had to sing.
Oh my gosh.
I remember that song.
I don't.
Yeah, the song was
Remember
called
Teach Me?
Oh Please Little Girl.
Yeah, and then there was Teach Me, and that song was.
Oh, that one's creeping me out. Yeah.
I know.
The Please Little Girl, it had the whole song in English and then in Spanish, so I sang it twice. I sang it in English, I sang it in Spanish.
Mhm.
I think it was a big FU to my mom, honestly.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
Wow. And Memo wrote it?
Yeah, he wrote it
Mhm.
for me,
Oh my
called Oh
gosh.
Please Little Girl.
Oh my gosh. That's
So
crazy.
the band was like a big thing too, because it was like, oh, you get to go places, you get to go.
Woodburn.
Yes.
Yes.
hmm And it was a thing for me and my like in the
Relationship.
grooming
Uh-huh.
because he was a big member in the band.
Mhm.
And so like there'd be the bus rides
Justify-
maybe.
Yeah, and they would let us sit together
Yeah.
and yes.
Hubbard,
Philomath.
Philomath,
I don't even know how to say that word.
Philomath.
Philomath. And then when we started going up to Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
Man, some of those Seattle trips
yeah, you were
were interesting. No, I don't know if you were there. There was this one time we were in Seattle and there was an apartment. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There was an apartment that they had been renting, I guess. And we all walked on the pier, and there was this woman who I don't know, she was just kind of off a little bit. But you know how they would typically like pick up people,
Yeah.
Bring home straight.
bring
Yeah.
home straight
Yes.
people, and it like sometimes they had real like mental issues,
Darwin.
mental
Well,
health
we have
issues.
Yeah, there's definitely some people. Mhm.
Darwin, oh man,
he was cuckoo, man.
he was a character.
I
For
think I was there
sure.
for that trip. Do you remember? So I remember the apartment. I remember being on the pier. Do you remember going to like a restaurant or something where they had like a band or tumbas or something?
Yes,
And he was
because
talking
it
about
was
like.
Memo's brother.
Okay, yes. So I was there for that.
Oh,
I remember
oh.
that.
Was it a seafood restaurant or a
Yeah,
Mex-
I want to say it was on like the wharf and it had big windows
Yes,
and it had like the
I
tumbas and
remember,
the.
but we didn't go in to eat. He just stopped there.
No, I
Yeah.
feel like we walked around and left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like before it was
'Cause
open.
we, like, never
we didn't
ate.
we didn't
He
eat.
only
No.
Yeah.
he only went there to talk to his brother.
Yes.
Oh my
Mhm.
god.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then this woman came back with us, and she ended up like grabbing a butcher knife from the kitchen and going in the bathroom and like trying to stab herself.
Oh
in
my
the
gosh,
heart.
I do remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I don't remember that. But the thing is, the way that they
It
would
got caught on her
misdirect.
rib.
So the way they misdirect us, they could be like, Sister Beth, you go take care of the kids. Like, Niko, come do this. Like, they could misdirect. Like, I was there on that trip because I remember some elements, and I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
My guess
it was
is
in the middle of the night.
my guess is I was taking care of the kids or something. Like, how would I not know that?
And how would I not know it?
A lot of everybody was sleeping.
Oh,
So you may have been passed out with the kids.
with the 3 hours of sleep. then.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it was only some of us though, because I woke up because I was like sleeping on the floor next to the bathroom or something.
Somewhere that they.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Oh my god! So what happened? Like, you guys found her, and then they called
found
911,
her,
or
and then and then she was gone, and it was like, what the fuck just
That was just,
happened?
yeah, it was done. It was over.
Yeah.
Oh my! And then no one heard
I
anything
don't
about
think we
anything the
heard
next
anything.
morning.
no, I know, I
No,
know.
it was done. It was done.
Was she dead?
I have no. She wasn't dead. It got like stuck on her rib. She couldn't get
The knife in.
the knife in, but it was stuck.
Oh my gosh! And you guys saw it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! That's horrible.
And we were all on the trip together in the same apartment, and you and I have no
And that was a
recollection
tiny
of
apartment.
this.
Like how?
And you guys both remember this.
How
That's
do we
kind of
not remember
That's how I
this?
feel about this part of the reunion. Is like I remember a detail, and then it's like oh yeah, because we were all so compartmentalized,
Yes.
and kept from
Even
need
together,
to know.
even in the same cult. Like, how do we not remember this? Like, were we asleep in a bedroom maybe? And maybe you guys
There
were
was
on
a
the
bedroom.
floor?
There was a bedroom.
So, like, were we asleep in the bedroom maybe with Dina and kids or something?
Probably.
Maybe.
could be.
Yeah.
It
That's
could
my
be,
guess.
'cause I'm
My
pretty
guess
sure
is that they would have shielded the kids from it. So if I didn't know about it,
Yes.
then I was
Well,
with
the
kids.
kid,
Yeah,
his
that was
kids
a
wouldn't
big
be
thing.
sleeping on the living room
No.
floor.
We have to be
Right.
quiet because we don't want the kids to wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember being in the living. I remember being with him, so wherever he was. is where
Okay,
I was.
so
I'm
that's
pretty
why
sure we
you
were out in
guys-
the living room.
Dang. That must have been really quiet. Was it really quiet? Oh, we were just
it
so
was
exhausted.
Pretty quiet. The
She-
woman was very quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
deliberate.
be
It
able
was-
to like shove a knife in my chest and
Oh
be
my
quiet.
gosh, no. And we're sure she did it herself?
Yes,
She
she
was
did.
doing
it
Okay,
herself.
okay.
There.
I just wanted to make sure that, I just want to clarify that. You know, you never know.
No, I mean,
There's so much crazy stuff. I mean,
Well, she was locked in the bathroom by
Yeah.
herself.
okay.
I do want to say, like, some of the people that over the years that Memo brought into the ministry
Yes.
Kind
were
of.
dangerous to themselves and others.
And
so,
to us.
so that's not a strange question.
No.
Actually.
No. Like even with Darwin, like he left us in the Bible study area alone with Darwin. Like, remember Darwin
Even
lived in
more
that
than
room in the
I
back?
got in his car and he drove me around like the neighborhood
Oh my gosh.
because
And like
he had
could have
that
taken
Corvette.
yes.
And he said he filled
was it
with-
red?
It was
Or blue.
it was
No, I
blue.
think it was blue.
It was
yeah,
blue.
yeah. Blue. Okay.
And he said he fueled it with jet fuel. Blue jet fuel.
Okay.
Oh.
Well,
Yeah.
that's cool. I wonder where you can get that at. I bet my SUV
The
can use some of that.
airport, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to look back and think about all of the dangerous and risky people that were like we knew nothing about. He just met them on the street and like, oh, I think I can brainwash him. Let's bring him home or bring her home. Like, it's so crazy. You meet someone and an hour later they're on the bus with us heading back home or in the minivan, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and not even questioning like what kind of criminal record might they have, or like, are they a pedophile? Are they safe to be around all these kids we have here at these houses?
Well,
His own kids.
Okay,
like,
so that's a good segue into I don't remember everything in terms of the timeline. And sometimes I'm like, I know I was here and I know I was here and I don't remember what happened in the middle.
yes,
But I think that a lot of us were questioning some of those types of choices and some of the risky behavior and being like, what is Memo doing? why is this happening? This isn't right. We couldn't question it out loud vocally because we knew we would be shamed. But some of us were talking about it behind the scenes.
Okay.
So me and the person that I was, more or less betrothed to were like, the hell?
So you guys were talking about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, like, fast forward back, I don't know, till I was 11. The ministry, I mean, we don't know because it's just what we were told us, but it was like founded by like a core set of brothers. Now, over the years, there had been like factions and separation and like infighting, and now there's different houses and different people it's like freaking Hogwarts in here, right?
Yeah.
Like different houses.
People were running different houses
Who's
while an
living in which
overall
houses, who's
arching
allowed
leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're questioning. We're legitimately questioning, like, is this God's will? Is this bullshit? Like, why is this happening? That shouldn't have happened. And why are they treating these kids this way? And like, between the two of us, I think we had some kind of a level of trust in between us that we could question it together.
Okay.
And because he had an older brother there, who was one of the initial founding members.
Yes.
So there was this me saying, like, I'm like in the posse. I'm like the insider's posse. And this is fucked up shit. Like, I don't like it. It's scaring me. They're taking advantage. Everybody's falling asleep. No one's getting sleep. Like, his kids are beating the crap out of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was wild stuff happening. And I'm telling him, I think Memo assumed he's also in the inner circle. But he was in the inner circle, but he also had a foot in the outer circle because of his brother.
Okay.
So I am, like, confessing to him all this stuff. And he's like, what the heckin'? And between the two of us, we're like, we think like Memo's cracking or like something's happening. This isn't good. We don't like it. We don't know what to do about it. So,
wow.
It's hard for me to break it down because I remember some of the broad strokes, and actually a lot of the stuff I haven't really fully remembered until like this week and having all of us talk.
Yeah.
But I was really close to some of the people in the Blue House, and there was at least, I think, 3 of the original 5 there. And I requested to spend time with them. I was like, I want to go see my friends, spend time with their kids. And I was told, no, you're needed here in the King's house. And I was like, well, can I go there 1 or 2 days a week? Can I go there? And it was no. And then it was, they might be straying from the will of God. Do you want to go spend time with them?
Really?
And so I kept, but like, I think I was like a little bit precocious and rebellious. And I'd be like, well, if they are, and if I'm on the path, then maybe I can help them. And maybe I can encourage them. Okay, I'll be at the King's house all day. Like, let me go sleep there at night. I'll pray with them. I was like, I just want to put eyes on my people and be with my people. I miss them.
Yeah.
In my, and I was just constantly told, no.
Wow.
And then at one point he was like, fine, the vibe was fine. You want to be with the trash, go live with the trash. So he let me move back there for a period of time, but then he started to like punish me by like excluding me from things. Like, it was just clear to me that he was showing like he was very upset that I wasn't falling in line. Wow. And I got to see like Mom Rose, and I got to like, and I was so happy because I missed everybody. I didn't care that he was like hazing me or that he was like, saying things. But it got to a point where it was like, are you going to be on this side or that side? I didn't know this at the time, but this was shortly before the Hawaii split. So I think he was really catalyzing us and them. Are you on my side or are you on their side? And I was like, I want to be over there. I want to be over there. I miss them. I want to be over there. I want to sleep there. I want to hang out with them. I miss them. And he's meanwhile getting ready to move half of us to another state. And I didn't know that.
Oh my God.
So I was like fighting really hard for it. And it was a huge bone of contention. And meanwhile, I'm talking to my, betrothed about it. And he's like, yeah, this is really problematic. How can he say, we're a family, we're united, and say all these things and then be causing so much divisiveness? And then the original 5 are talking about it. So it's like this kind of open split happening. Yeah. And which side am I going to fall on? So I remember the day. I'm going to, hopefully I don't cry. So I used to cook for all the kids, and I used to teach at the King's house, and I was like getting ready, making lunch. I think I was chopping sausages. And Memo was like, Sister Beth, we need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And I'm like chopping, and he's like, no, we need to talk to you right now. Because he passed in and out of the kitchen a few times. And I was like, yeah, I'm almost done. He's like, no, right now. And I was chopping, and I sliced my finger. And I was like pinching it. And he's like, we need to talk to you right now. And it was weird, like the sense of urgency, I didn't like my gut was, because this had all been building up, like all these secret conversations, like all this like unspoken animosity. It was very weird. So I walked so I'm in the kitchen. I walked through the dining room.
Which house were you in?
The King's house.
Okay.
Into the living room. There's a big, almost like a card table, like a folding table, but it was a long one. And I came in and it was like the Knights of the Round Table. Like there was all these people. I want to say it was a dozen people seated all around it.
Yeah.
I don't remember every single person. I remember a lot of people that were there, but it was like they were waiting for me. And I just remember like gripping my finger, like holding it so it wouldn't bleed. And I think honestly, it's weird because I think it helped me like get through it. Like that I was like holding this like bleeding cut. And I went and sat down and he was like, Sister Beth. And he just started telling me about how like I'd gone astray, how like the devil was getting to me, how like I was falling prey to the spirit of divisiveness. Like I don't remember the words, but it was this big like mind fuck.
Oh my God.
You're not, you know what I mean? And so he had everybody at the table had a minute or two to be like, yeah, Sister Beth, let me encourage you, like be on the right side of God. Like just, just
because you were going to the blue house.
Yes.
Wow.
And so they went around the table and every single person was like, Sister Beth, you're being rebellious, you're being selfish, you're being like, every single one of them said something about how like I was making it about me, how I was doing something wrong, how I wasn't,
And so do you think you were about 15 or 16 at the time?
15.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure I was 15. So they went all around the table and I'm like, I'm pissed. My finger is bleeding. I'm pissed. At this point, I'm looking at everybody going like,
what the fuck?
I can see this. Because we've been talking shit about this for a while. Like, what is he doing? Like we're seeing the divisiveness. We're seeing the splitting. We're talking about it. They're doing it. And we go all the way around the table and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because I'm like, my sense of reality is like breaking. And the very last person that went around the whole room, he said something about like, even when Jesus was persecuted, he didn't throw stones. Or I don't remember what he said, but he said something that was like basically a veiled way of saying like, you're being persecuted right now, but you're not going to throw stones. I don't remember the words he said, but what he said was, and he made eye contact with me. He was also very close to my betrothed.
Okay.
So he definitely, like what he said was a Bible script, but what it was is you're the one being persecuted right now. Like I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm still here. It was and I was like, okay, thank you, brother. And they were like, okay. And I was like, okay. And so I think they thought the matter had been settled. And I went to the bathroom and I was wearing a pair of earrings that Theresa had given me to wear. I was borrowing them. They were really special. She had gotten them someone had brought them from Mexico. Oh. They were gold coupe earrings.
Okay.
And I was just staring at myself in the mirror, like what's happening? What am I going to do? Like, I felt like I was like in shock.
Yeah.
Because I was like, who am I? What's happening? Where do I go? What do I do? And I took the earrings out and I set them on the counter because I wanted Theresa to have them. And I just walked out of the bathroom. I walked to the back door. I picked up my shoes. I put them on. I walked out the door and I kept walking. And I walked 3 miles, 4 miles. I don't know how many miles, 3 to 5 miles between Memo's house and my mom's house.
Okay.
I just started walking. And at this point, Memo realized it backfired because he thought like he had like crushed.
Kind of put you in line.
Yes. And then because I was like, okay, I nodded and I smiled and I went to the bathroom. So they were like, all right, good meeting. And then I ran out the back door. So he followed me and he was like, Sister Beth. And he kept, Sister Beth.
So
okay.
Following you walking or in his van? Okay.
No, he was walking.
Okay.
I was walking and I wasn't saying anything because I'm like processing. I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? What's happening? Like, I felt like I wanted to talk to my guy and be like, this just happened. We've been talking about all this. This is so fucked up.
But there's no cell phones.
There's no cell phones. Yeah. There's no pagers. There's no nothing. So I'm just walking. I need just to get away from there. And so I walked, I remember down that little street into kind of a main street. Then you go across the freeway. Like, I kept walking. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. And the whole time he was like, Sister Beth, you know what? Maybe we've neglected you. Like he went between like hellfire and like we should have supported you better. And you should have done this. And like he went back and forth and up and down and side. I didn't say a word for probably half an hour. As I kept walking, he just kept following me. He just kept following me and being like, Sister Beth, and saying this, that, and the third. And I just kept walking because I didn't want to engage with him. I didn't know what to say, and I didn't know what my plan was. And then at some point, as we got closer to my mom's house, I was like, okay, I need to, like, I've got to address this in some type of way, because he was like telling me that I had gone astray. And I was like, you know what, Memo, you're right. You're right. I have been rebellious. I haven't been following the will of God. Do you know why? Because my mother lives in this house by herself. I was like, her house is falling apart. Her daughter's not here with her. Her yard is falling apart. Here I am doing all this stuff in the ministry for other people. My own mother is languishing. I should be helping my mother. If I was a woman of God, I would help my mother. And he's like, you're right. You're right, Sister Beth. You're right. He was like, you're right. Let's have all the brothers come and like do her yard work for her. You're right. You're right. You should be that. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, and so, but then he kept following me, and he was like, get in the van with me, come back with me. We'll send people over to do it later. And I said, no.
So at some point he had went back and got the van?
I feel like at some point somebody brought the van and was like trying.
Oh,
At some point they, yeah. And I said, no, the neighbors don't know you. A bunch of random guys in my mom's yard. I was like, no, I'm not leaving her house. If you're going to send the brothers to do her yard, then send the brothers, but I'm staying. He kept talking to me and talking to me. So I went to my mom's house. I knocked on the back door. She wasn't home. Her car wasn't there. I went through the backyard. I climbed up the stairs into the tree house in my backyard, my childhood tree house. He kept, Sister Beth, Sister Beth. I climbed on top of the house, the roof of the tree house. And I was sitting, that was as far as I could get away from him.
Oh,
and he kept, Sister Beth, Sister Beth, Sister Beth. And eventually the van came with the brothers and they started doing yard work.
Oh my gosh. What the hell?
And then the same brother, Felipe, the one that had said the line that was like, you're not crazy, he goes, shh. And then I went around and he goes, so-and-so's at the end of the street in his van, go see him. And so I like tiptoed off, and there was my guy at the end of the van. And he's like, what the fuck happened? And I'm like, this is what happened. He goes, oh my God, get in the van, let's go. This is bullshit. So we jumped in the van and we left.
Wow. So basically you ran away with him.
I ran away with him.
Yeah. Can I add something? When, we talked about this last night, and I didn't have this memory until just now that I'm listening to you. But in the king's house, just before you walked out and left, when he had everybody circling the table, I remember, you know how like when you get like a crumb of something on the floor and ants will come and there'll be like 1,000 ants, and you just get like a huge pile of ants. Well, I remember minutes before that, you were still in the kitchen dicing, preparing for lunch. And he called me and one of our younger friends, and he's like, you two girls, clean those ants up. And we're all like spraying down our hands, and he's trying to gather all the ants, and we're
like
getting like covered in ants, and we're trying to kill them all and smash them. And that's when you came in and he started talking to you, and we were hearing the way he was talking and throwing around words like, you're falling into sin and you're being sinful, and you have, and then at some point he has this phrase like you'll be buffeted by Satan or the devil, these things that he would say, that always he would say them just before somebody was either kicked out or left, or, it just culminated to that head that it ended right there and that person would be no more. And I remember looking at her, and by this time we were just about done cleaning up the ants. I remember looking up at her, and she looked at me, and she went like this, and we both walked to our room and started crying because we knew how it was going to end. Because he started throwing around words like that, and we just knew how it was going to end. Wow. And we didn't know anything for solid until like the next day what had happened. But I remember she and I both went in their room to cry. Because we just knew. And because we remember that there was some pushback. Why can't I go see these people? Like, what's wrong?
They're
like
his
just
house
yesterday
still.
they were
and it's
they were our
his
friends.
house.
They were best friends.
Yeah. It's part
Why
of the
now?
ministry.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened between him and the other elders. why there was such this rift before the Hawaii split, you know?
Yeah.
That's the question.
That is a question that we've always had that we've never really had to answer. And there's been
Like,
rumors.
was it the abuse that someone found out over in that house?
So there were rumors that when they did come to the king's house, when those people from the blue house, when it divided, we ended up, the people that were at the king's house was on one side, and then there was Primo's side on the blue house on another side, right?
Uh-huh.
The people that were stayed with the blue house, they came through, and everybody like marched through the king's house like a line, and we're all just, they would go down the line saying goodbye, we're gonna miss you. But then I remember when they got to certain people, like my sister asked, why are you guys doing this? What's going on? Why? And I remember one specific person said, you're gonna find out, and you're gonna wish that you were sided with us when you do.
What the hell?
And so
What
she
does
has
that
her
mean?
theories that she knows what it was. And she told me, but
I wish that somebody would have just been more direct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what my sister always says. If they knew something was going on, what did they say?
I mean, if it was something bad, why not tell the rest of us so that we could like try to protect ourselves or protect our own children that we had already. I mean, the rest of you hadn't had children, but like I already had children. Like it should have, like if bad stuff was happening and they were trying to protect their people, well, shouldn't they have also cared about the other people that may have been being harmed even longer by
Yes.
staying in the dark about what was happening?
Well, the way we were told is that if you stayed on that side of the fence, you knew. So for us,
Okay.
like you would have known. Everybody that stayed on that side would have known.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think like at least a part of it was like just like straight up racism, classism. Do you remember they used to do bilingual Bible studies and then they only did English? And it was like the Mexicans over there do their Bible studies in Spanish, and we over here at the King's house do our
Okay,
English
yeah.
Bible studies. So it was almost like lowbrow, highbrow. We're moving to Hawaii. I'm elevating. I'm getting middle class white families to sell their houses and move in and give me all their money. Y'all are just some, lowbrow Mexicans.
I'm only getting $400 from you a month.
It was like, it was
Okay.
very much, and again, I didn't know he was getting ready to go to Hawaii, but it was this, do you want to be with the lowbrow or do you want to be on the king's mission to the higher ground with the bigger ambitions? Like it was very, I don't know if it was abuse or if it, like, not to say that wasn't happening on both sides, but I don't know if the actual split was something bad or if it was just about Memo wanted to separate himself from the riffraff and elevate the ones he wanted to elevate and just be like, there's a split there, that's them and this is us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe both, and maybe there was some of both, but I think there was probably some ownership and some money involved in all these dealings. So there's 5 guys, they come together, they create this entity. Now Memo wants to go take off, and now there's multiple houses and dozens of people and families and mothers and kids. So how do you separate it without creating
And everybody has contributed.
the Red Sea,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how much of it was engineered because it was Memo's way of detaching himself from.
Well,
Interesting.
I think that is a really good point. I think also there had to have been something else major involved because
I'm sure.
there was such a sense of betrayal to him. Like he would cry about it. Like I would
Memo?
see him cry about it. Yeah. So
What?
yeah.
I felt
So
like the
he-
betrayal was
Vice versa.
I'm
but
not. No.
yeah.
I'm not. Sorry. I don't want to discount what you're saying.
No, I know.
What I'm saying is, I saw the other brothers on the other side with that same sense of betrayal.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yes.
I think
That's
it was,
what I felt
there
towards
was something
me as
bigger.
well. Even like when I lived at the King's house after the divorce, like they like it felt like they hated me and they despised me. And like I'm like, I don't have anything to do with the King's house, Peach house. I'm like just renting a room from this Peach house. Like I didn't understand what it was,
there
but
was in-group, out-group dynamics.
but it
big time.
definitely felt like I felt like betrayal and like hatred and disgust, and I'm like, what in the world? I'm
By
just
that
here a
point, there
single
was a
mom
lot
with
of
my
lack of
boys.
trust.
Like our boys could play together, maybe. I don't like what's going on. I never understood what it was. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so you left with him.
Yes.
And then where did you guys go after that?
To a hotel.
Oh, okay. Consummated the no.
Well, no. I mean,
Was he respectful?
I'll be
Okay.
honest. We were we've been preparing for this. We'll say a prayer in front of God and hand fast or I don't know, whatever the heck. But we were like, we want to be married. We're going to be married. Like everything is falling. The world is ending. We're just going to be together. So we were just like, we're in the eyes of God. We're married.
Okay.
Because that was I don't know. That was where we felt at the time.
Okay.
And then I was told that my mom was looking for us and that he would probably be arrested and that I need to turn myself in. So I came back to my mom's house and I stayed with her for a week.
Okay.
And then I think from my mom's house, I moved to the room that I rented from you guys.
Okay.
Because I wasn't with him. I was in a neutral location.
Okay.
And then eventually I got my dad to sign for us to get married a few months later.
Dang. So you were, when you got married, were you 16 or 17?
17.
Okay.
17.
I think I just turned 17 when I got married. But, and then I had my son at 17. And that's a whole nother story.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the time?
10 minutes, we're good.
Okay, how are you feeling at this point? Like, do we need to do another episode? I feel like you still have another episode.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we can kind of revisit tomorrow. There's a lot of context that we've skipped over to just kind of go through the main structure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people will have questions. And honestly, as we've been talking over the last few days, there's so much of it that I've blocked out or that I've
That we're still
disassociated
remembering,
from that I'm remembering.
Well, and don't forget, we can always do this digitally.
Yeah.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Virtually.
Okay, I think we're at a good stopping point to end the episode right now. And then I feel like we should start up again tomorrow if you have the energy, and then we'll see how far we get with Theresa. And we definitely want to do a wrap up with all of us and Buck again before everyone goes back home. But if we don't get through everything, guys, we'll plan on doing the digital, podcast. I feel like that's a good plan because I know there's a lot more to your story, and I feel like you, if you want to share it, you should be able to share it.
I just appreciate everybody like you for hosting us and everybody for coming together. I like flying across the country to spend time with somebody you haven't seen in decades.
3 decades.
Process the most painful, shameful shit in your entire life.
I know.
For the public.
To see.
I have never felt like more seen and supported. And I'm really grateful just to know that we all experienced this and it happened.
And it's not just in our heads.
And that it's not just us. This happens to people.
Mm-hmm.
We were kids. How many other kids are like this?
Yeah.
And how many other things like this are happening?
Mm-hmm.
And people have to talk about it because they want to put the shame on us and keep us quiet because of what we went through. But if we don't normalize these things, then other people are just going to keep quiet too and enable the perpetrators.
Yeah, and not know the warning signs or, all of those things that we all could, be looking out like for in our neighbors and in our neighborhood groups and in our
if you're a medical professional, if you're a neighbor, if you're a parent, if you're if you're a single mom, if you're vulnerable, like there are predators out there that are looking for vulnerable people to exploit.
Absolutely.
And they may be your neighbor.
To look for.
Right, and they may be your neighbor. Okay.
And I want to point out we're all here together, but there's countless people we don't know where they are, and they're not all in good places.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, it's taken us how long to get to this point where we're actually able to share this and come to terms like, oh shit, what happened to us was fucked up, and we need to bring awareness to this so that more people don't suffer these same things. More children don't fall into this trap, this vicious cycle of being taken granted for and being brainwashed, exploited, trafficked, all of the child brides. Like, people need to, this happens in an urban community,
Talk about the missing 16.
Well, so in one of the newspaper articles, that Mace was helping cover. Remember Mace Winters? You know Mace Winters, and he was probably who contacted you. Yeah. In one of the news articles that they reported on, they reported 16 missing victims.
Missing victims.
Yeah, so these have been people that were identified by other people in the cult that they felt had been victimized, or that they had reported that they were victimized, but nothing was ever able to come forward. I have the article. It's in the Oregonian.
We should talk about that too.
So like who are
like we're the fortunates. We're the fortunates in all this. We've been able to like move on and have some semblance of a life and a support system and mental health support.
And then they also state in the article that, you know, there was the state jumping happening, and so that was essentially hiding victims, hiding perpetrators, and you know, you had people fleeing back to Mexico to avoid prosecution. So like all of these innocent people, you know, like I know, yeah, shit happened to me, but not as bad as some happened to others. Like they all deserve justice.
Yes.
You know, these people should be held accountable. These people should be able to get to a point in their life where they're able to begin healing and moving on, instead of this continuing to be their bondage and their shame and their guilt for like the rest of their life. Like, how's that fair, you know? So like my hope is through this that we're able to help those other victims come forward too, and like even if it's not justice, but to get to a point where they can release that shame and guilt and like get on to a healing path, instead of like, you know, the shame is so heavy and you just try to forget it and brush it under the rug. But all that does, it's like a festering wound. If you have an infection, the longer you leave it treated, like we just noticed this with my cat, the longer you leave an infected wound untreated, the bigger it grows and festers and festers. And at some point it gets to be too unbearable. And then that's when you go down the path of self-destruction. And we know we've lost 2 other survivors, one from the Blue House and then our friend. How many more children need to be lost to self-destruction that can be helped if, you know, if they can just get to a point where they can release that shame? And you know, I mean, that's my goal for this. And I know that's all of your goals, because it has not been easy getting to this point. Not at all. So I thank you all for coming and you know, allowing me to host.
Thank you for having us.
It's been super fun. I love, you know, hosting. I don't exactly know what I'm doing, but you know, I like entertaining. I like cooking. Okay, I like feeding people. I'm the food pusher. At least I'm not a pill pusher. But you know, it's been fun. It's been really great to see where we all are, how different we are, and like reconnect and like grow that friendship and all of like our connected experience and connected trauma. Like, yeah, we have trauma bonds, but you know, we still have a deep friendship, and like, you know, it just goes beyond it's beyond the trauma bonding. It's deeper than that. You know, we all grew up together, and the fact that we can reconnect and build friendships from where we are
and feel safe enough to unpack all this.
Yeah, because like this is scary stuff.
It is.
And
it's stuff we bottled down for so long.
And you have to be at a really vulnerable point to let all of these things in the head out of the mouth. And it's not easy to do, because you become exposed and you're vulnerable, and that feels bad.
Well, and when you say it, you have to own it too.
Yeah. I know.
That's true.
So we're going to leave it there for tonight, you guys. It's getting a little late. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be recording some more. But if anyone has any questions, once this is posted, send it through the media channels so we can see your guys' questions and we can bring it together on a live podcast and address your questions. Again, check us out at Squirrel Brain Stories, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. And thank you, Niko, for recording with us tonight. Thank you, Beth, for sharing your story. I know that was not easy and you were very strong, and I'm very proud of you because I know how hard it is to share like that. And I'm excited to get into your story too, Theresa. So thank you all. This has been good, and we will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.